So, as you said, this visit was lasted several days, and when we were planning this work, we planned it so that we did not have to travel many times. And we had an SEO Summit, trilateral meeting, Russia, India, China. I have to say that this format of work allows us to conduct very productive negotiations. And also, what is most important is to meet informally. And we were able to discuss any topic. And this is very important and very useful. As for results, there are positive results, documents that were signed by all participants, will work for the future. I would like to point out in this relation the initiative on global governance. I think it's very timely and very important. This initiative is aimed at positivity in cooperation between the countries that met at the summit and also with our potential partners who maybe do not want to be, are not saying they want to be partners today. So that unity of those who got together is very important, and that demonstrated that unity to the world. I'd like to continue the topic of your visit. There was a number of documents signed. And one of the projects became the theme of the meetings of the summit. The agreements that were reached. Do you think the agreements that were signed demonstrate and negate all the rumors that go around about the relationship between China and Russia? To be honest, I don't know what you are talking about. So I'm not distracted by small rumors here and there in the amount of work that we are doing. This work is indeed. This work had been discussed for a long time, and we were discussing all the pros and cons, and we had negotiations that lasted several years, but we know that the world economy, we see that the world economy is in recession in Eurozone. Nevertheless, world economy is growing. So the demand for energy resources is growing, especially among others in Chinese economy, which remains the locomotive of the world economy. The GDP did slow down, however, the base has grown. So what is this leading to? It's leading to an increased demand for energy resources. So we found a consensus. And there's no charity here. This is a mutually beneficial agreement. And these agreements are based on market conditions, based on the current market conditions in that specific region. And the price is formulated not based on today's situation, but using a certain formula, and it's using very objective factors. So there is growing demand in Chinese economy. We've got the possibilities to supply, to satisfy this demand. So this is not timed for our meeting. This is just a result of commercial parties working together. Of course, this will create a competitive advantage for our Chinese friends, because they will be receiving the product at the market price, not at an inflated price. What's most important is they will receive stable supply, secure supply. So everyone is satisfied, everyone's happy. Gazprom is one of our companies, is expanding its supply base. So Mongolia, 50 billion, some other routes. That's where they're going to increase their supply. Good evening, Pavel Zarubin from Russia. You said many times, and you mentioned it yesterday, the primary reason for Ukrainian conflict. And now we see European leaders discuss guarantees of security for Ukraine, and they are concentrating on placing their military in Ukraine, and also they're insisting on accepting Ukraine into EU. But we see that EU is turning very quickly from an economic union into a military union. And how can you comment on all of this? I agree with those who believe that every country has the right to select itself the system to ensure its security. That goes for all countries, including Ukraine. But that also means that security of one country cannot be ensured at the expense of security of another country, including Russian Federation. We always would never underestimate it, or would never undermine the right of Ukraine to conduct its own activities, but we were against its joining NATO. When they're discussing the initiative between US and Russia, they are talking about exchange of territories for security. Is this reflective of what you discussed in Alaska? And who needs to be the guarantor for security? Does it make sense to meet with Zelenskyy at this time? Is it possible to find some... What is the first part of the question? So efforts of... so it's exchange of territories for security. No, we never put the question this way, never discussed it that way. Of course, naturally, guarantees for security. It's all based on the fact that any country has to have assurances of security, including Ukraine. But it was not connected to exchange for territories. To be honest, we're not fighting for territories, we're fighting for human rights, for the rights of people who live on their territory, to speak in Russian language, to live according to their culture and their traditions, of their fathers, grandfathers. This is what primarily we're talking about. And if these people, in the course of democratic procedures, express their desire to be in part of the Russian Federation, we have to respect them. This is democracy, I'd like to remind everyone. And apart from that, that is completely compliant with international law. the articles of United Nations that every country has the right for self-determination. We could say that these are connected topics, territory and guarantees of security, but we never directly discussed it. So we never discussed this in Anchorage this way. As for possible meetings with Mr. Zelenskyy, I've never excluded the possibility of meeting with him. Does it make sense to meet with him? Let's have a look. In accordance with Constitution of Ukraine, some people could disagree with this, but you can just read it. No means of extending the authority of the president other than elections is not provided. So there's no other means of extending that 5-year term. When the 5-year term is over, that's it. There is an article that, in accordance with which elections are not conducted. That's true. But that doesn't mean that the authority of the president is prolonged. That means the authority of the president is terminated and then it's passed on to the Speaker of the Rada, including the function of the chief commander. What needs to be done in this situation if they want to be legitimate and take part in negotiations? They have to conduct elections. Apologize, not elections, a referendum in accordance with the Constitution of Ukraine. So the questions on territory have to be decided according to referendum. But referendum cannot be done in the conditions of the martial law. In order to conduct a referendum, you need to cancel the martial law, but for that you need to do elections, and that process is going to be endless. The results of the elections would be unclear. But in any case, you have to have a conclusion of the Constitution Court. This is what it says in the law. But how do you get conclusion of the Constitution Court if the authorities require of the prolongation of the authority of the president? So the security stopped to let the representatives of the Constitutional Court to the premises, and that was the situation. But that's not the end of the story. From what I've heard, he even had to leave, some members of that court had to leave abroad, and some of their authorities expired as well. So this is a road to nowhere. So does it make sense to meet with the current administration? We could do. I've never refused to do that if that leads to some positive outcomes. And by the way, Donald asked me if it was possible. I said yes, it was possible. I said let him come to Moscow. Another question. Andrei Kolesnikov, good evening. Do you believe that multipolar world that which you described in Munich in 2007 and the new summit where leaders are China, India and Russia, do you think that world has been created now? And the second question is, a few hours ago, Mr. Merz called you one of the most serious military criminals of the current times. What do you think about this? Just recently, a couple of hours ago. As for the question of whether there is a multipolar world now, overall, the trends have been said, but with that, I would not talk about multipolar world, because when we talk about multipolar world, that means that there have to be new hegemons. But this is not the kind of questions that are being asked at SEO. And from the point of view of international law, everyone has to be in equal situation. Yes, of course, there are some economic giants, India, China, and our country too is within the 4 largest countries in the world in terms of parity of buying capacity. These are not our calculations. These are calculations of international organizations, but that doesn't mean that somebody has to dominate politically and also dominate in the field of security. So we are not basing ourselves in that principle that somebody has to dominate. Everyone has to be equal. As for statements that you mentioned, what do I think about this? I think that this is an awkward attempt to remove from himself, not from himself personally, but from the country, the responsibility for the tragedy that is taking place in Ukraine. I would like to remind you that in 2014, ministers of 3 European countries signed a document which was the agreement between the acting authority, the president, and opposition. And in accordance with that agreement, all the questions, open questions of the political nature had to be resolved peacefully. And literally after a day or maybe 2 days, there was a bloody coup that took place. None of the guarantors took any action to prevent this. This is where the conflict started, because straight after that there were events in Crimea. Straight after this, Kiev regime undertook military action in using armored vehicles and aviation against people who disagreed with them. And then they derailed all our attempts to resolve this conflict by peaceful means, and they publicly refused to abide by Minsk's agreements. And who is to blame? Who was ignoring the interests of Russia in the field of security? If somebody believes that you can just dismiss the people of our country like that, you know that we will never accept a situation where Russia is just observing how its rights are ignored. Good evening. Olga Skabeva from Russia, Channel Russia. In Europe, they are talking more often and talking about it more loudly, that they need to take the money from us, the frozen money. And some people believe that this is dangerous and not very nice, but some people are prepared to push forward. And another question is, do you think there is a chance that the conflict is going to finish? Is the conflict close to the finish? I'll start with the second question, because it's a key thing. Back in 2022, we proposed to Ukrainian authorities to treat the interests of those who live in the southeast of Ukraine with respect and withdraw troops and finish the conflict. And overall, this did not cause outright refusal, but after withdrawing our forces from Kiev, their position changed, and they said, okay, now we're going to fight. This is what they said. So this is what they said. I don't know if I said it publicly before, but this is, they said, okay, now we're going to fight, either you or us. Nevertheless, I believe that if common sense is there, then that it is possible to agree an acceptable option or acceptable way of ending this conflict. And the current administration of the United States, we see also that they've got the will and desire to find this solution. I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We will see. Otherwise, we'll be forced to resolve all our objectives through military means. So I think the first question was discussed already. Somebody wants to confiscate the money, somebody doesn't want to. Those who are smarter, they don't want to. That's true. There's no irony in this. Why? Because those who are smarter, these people deal with economy and finance, and they know that this would destroy all principles of international financial activity. This will harm, without any doubt, the world economy, the whole of the world economy. We see that without that, in certain countries of the world, there are some alliances being formed where they're trying to achieve their own means, and in that context, this separatism in the financial world is not something that is desirable. Could you share the latest information about the situation in the special military operation? How did the situation change on the battlefield recently? All of the groups of the Russian armed forces on all directions are on attack. They are attacking at a different pace, but I'm not going to list all of them. You know all of these directions and all these sections of the front. How the enemy is reacting to this. What we're seeing is that they're trying to plug the holes by transferring the most capable units from one difficult part of the region, of fighting region, to another. If I remember correctly, quite recently, of course I need to check this, we are in Beijing. From Sumy region, they transferred their 95th Brigade to another region, and they just replaced them with less capable units. And this is what's happening on all fronts. sections of the contact line. We shouldn't be relaxed now. Maybe they're preparing some reserves, maybe they're preparing some actions, maybe large-scale events, but preliminary analysis of our military experts says that the enemy, the military of Ukraine, do not have this capability. They do not have the capability to conduct large-scale operations. So this is not a single example. This is not just a unique example. This is happening all over the contact line. And this demonstrates the fact that, as we believe, and also Western experts believe, that Ukrainian military has got less and less reserves. The combat-capable reserves, less and less. So they've come to a critical line of their reserves, capable of fighting. But this is, of course, a complicated matter. We should not go too deep, try to forecast too much, but this is the analysis of the current situation. Good evening, Igor Zhdanov, RT. Coming back to Alaska, as soon as you landed, you started speaking with Donald Trump right on the red carpet, and then you went into his vehicle and you continued to speak with him. Could you tell us what you spoke about and what language you spoke about and what are the details? Of course in English, but my poor English, whatever I was able to say, but at the beginning I said, glad to see you, dear neighbor, healthy and alive. But in the limousine, it was maybe 30 seconds, just general phrases here and there. There's no secret. I told Modi what we spoke about in Alaska. Cultural question. We're all cultured. Our connections with China are developing not just in the field of economy, but also cultural field. There's a film being made, Red Silk, and Xinhua agency was also mentioning this. Do you think there will be similar projects in the future? I think this was the idea of Chairman Xi. And I also looked at the fact that it was difficult to get to the market of China. He smiled and he said, look, we need to produce together and then the market is open. I have not seen that film, but I know that there was a presentation. Overall, the film is popular, and of course we have some other projects, and all of the plans, and we've got many plans for this, and know that. So I know that the work is being done on other joint film productions. To continue the topic of film, there's a film in the West where one of the protagonists is yourself. Have you seen this film? Jude Law was playing you. No, I've not seen the film, and this is the first time I hear about it. Another question. You touched upon health. We had some footage where you talked about immortality and health with Xi. I did not really pay attention. Do you think people will be able to live 150 years? Ah, yes, I remember. Chairman Xi talked about it. Yes, Berlusconi was developing this topic in his time. Some methods, some surgical procedures, they give people hope that their life would continue longer for a longer period and would significantly increase the life expectancy. There was some data, I can't remember, maybe in the 50s. You know, by 2050, there will be more people. There will be more people on the planet older than 65. So that has social and economic consequences. So this is a topic which is very important in the context of longevity. Coming back to the topic of your visit and the program of your visit, this SEO Summit was the largest in terms of scale. What is the role of this organization in today's world? And do you think SEO could become a political union? SEO is not there to be opposed to anyone. I'd like to point your attention again to the fact that in the discussions, in the bilateral meetings, we've never had anything that could be called as a confrontation initiative. So everything that we do has a positive theme. So we're not thinking about positioning ourselves against somebody. We do not have that competition philosophy. No, we are thinking about how to organize our own work, and through common efforts come to positive results.
Владимир Владимирович, скажите, пожалуйста, вот сейчас 19-й пакет санкций готовит Европа.
Now Europe is preparing the 19th package of sanctions, not for us, but against our partners. And you spoke with a large number of SEO members, and this could affect India and China. What do you think about this, and how can we react to this, and who will suffer from this? As strange as it sounds, we haven't discussed this topic almost. Why? Because this does not concern us. Events in Ukraine are just an excuse for decisions of economic nature against certain countries. For example, yes, there's a certain disparity between trade in the US and China, but nobody talks about Brazil and US. So then the deadline was 8th of August, but then they introduced additional tariffs against Brazil on the 6th. So what does Ukraine have to do with this? So there are internal political issues, including the relationships between the current people in power and their opposition. So that's number one. Yes. Secondly, yes, there are some imbalances in trade. So now we had a lengthy consultation with some of our partners. And with some of them, we have some imbalance, not in our favor. But we are aiming to agree with our partners on what they could supply to us and what we could supply back to them. And we are aiming at resolving all of that. And we are managing to do this, by the way. So our supplies exceed 3 times what they're supplying to us. So what? We need some patience to resolve this. Secondly, India, 1.5 billion, China, over a billion. They've got large economies, but with their own internal political laws. When people outside say, we will put pressure on you, we will punish you. You know, we're talking about large, powerful countries that live through very difficult periods, historical periods, when others wanted to put pressure on them. How are they to react to this? So if they threaten, so this colonial age has finished in the same way, because they had this kind of approach to doing things. So finally, at the end, everything will come back to a normal economic dialogue. So we propose to make this last question. You spoke about the fact that there's a possibility to increase the representation of status of representatives conducting negotiations with the Ukraine. Who could this be? Could this be Lavrov, Ushakov? If there's a need to increase the level of the representative group, we are prepared for this. I am not prepared to talk in specific figures. Yes, we're prepared. And we are prepared to lift it to a very high political level. What's important is the result, what our negotiating group is doing under Medinsky. I think this is a good example of restraint and professionalism.
Дело в том, что я хотел с вами поговорить про работу сетевых Дело в том, что сейчас на Западе против него начался целый вал критики очень жесткой со стороны и СМИ, и политиков. В том, что он неправильно вас понимает на переговорах, что он неправильно передает президенту США Дональду Трампу содержание переговоров.
The question about Medinsky, that he is misunderstanding you, and
как бы вы оценили его работу? Спасибо.
And there's a question about the assistant to the US president. This is not my thing to give any evaluation to any of the Trump's assistants, because
и с другими членами команды российского руководства позицию именно американского президента, а не какую-то.
But he is conveying the position of American president and not anybody else. And it's clear from negotiations that he is conveying the Russian position very clearly to President Trump. So the position of the American side was very clear to me when we discussed it in Anchorage. So that information had been conveyed in full. But I think this is the crux of the matter. Those who criticize him, they don't like this process, but they don't like the position of Trump himself. So approaches to the settlement could be different. There are those who say that you have to fight until the last Ukrainian, and there are those who are like representatives of the president's administration and the president himself are trying to find a solution. So the first party, the party of war, is always attacking the other side, and the rest of it is just some rumors, insinuations, some attempts to somehow confirm their point of view. About Azerbaijan and China. Before the parade, Trump commented, he said that China and Russia will remember that American soldiers were helping in the Second World War. How can he comment his with Trump's? Well, I understand that they've got a good sense of humor in the U.S. So we are on first name basis with President Trump over the last 4 days in the course of all sorts of negotiations, multi-format negotiations. Nobody said anything that was negative in relation to the current American administration. That's number one. Second, everyone who I met supported our meeting in Anchorage, and everyone expressed their hope that President's position, Trump's position, would lead to the end of the military conflict. So there's no irony or jokes, because everyone will see this publicly. This is the best assurance that I'm telling the truth, because all those who I spoke to will confirm that this is what's been said. Otherwise, I'd look very pale in front of my friends. I also would like to come back to what I mentioned before. The activity of SEO and the activity of our partners is not directed at fighting against anyone. It's directed at developing the best means for our own development. Olga Samsonova, RIA Novosti. From Baku, there were different statements that were being made addressed to Russia. How do you estimate the state of our relationships between the countries, and how can we establish dialogue? Briefly,
всегда возникают какие-то вопросы, исходя из...
There are always some issues that come up in relationships between countries.
Есть проблемы.
There are some problems.
С президентом Алиевым поздоровались,
We
с ним, с супругой,
we
двумя-тремя словами.
greeted each other with President Aliyev and his wife.
Фундаментальные отношения
I believe that fundamentally
Азербайджана и России
the relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan,
все проставить на свои места.
and I think that there are great common interests, and finally everything will be resolved and sorted.
Валентин Алфимов, «Комсомольская правда». Владимир Владимирович,
Комсомольская правда.
говорим о мире на Украине,
We talk about peace in Ukraine.
о договоренностях стран, о том, что предлагает
We talk
Европа,
about
чего боится
agreements
Украина.
between countries.
Ваше мнение.
What is your opinion?
Один вопрос, возможно, самый-самый
I think there is one question that we haven't touched upon.
Каждый из вас задает самые важные.
Every one of you is asking the most important question. You are regularly receiving
полей боя.
news from the
Мы знаем, что вы регулярно
front
общаетесь с
line,
командирами в
and I know that you are
бойцами в окопах.
constantly communicating with commanders on the front line and with soldiers on the front line. What are they saying? Are they happy to accept peace deal, or are they insisting on fighting to the end?
Подавляющим своем большинстве,
They, in majority of them,
стоят за то, чтобы
they
достигла всех своих
they
целей,
want Russia to achieve all the goals that were set before special measure operation. And how this would be achieved is another matter. We are offering
в прямом и переносном смысле слова стороне неоднократно посмотрим,
we have offered
двигаться дальше. Этот процесс
this process, peaceful process, many times
действующей администрации.
to the existing administration.
Это может еще долго продолжаться.
Нет, сейчас я заканчиваю.
Mr. President, this might go on for a while.
Исключение стоит рядом, никто или нет.
Владимир Владимирович, Алена Нефедова, газета «Известия». На саммите в Анкоридже вы пригласили Дональда Трампа посетить Москву.
Summit, you invited Donald Trump to visit Moscow. Is there any preparation going on for that visit? Are there any agreements?
Подготовка к встрече не ведется. Но приглашение на столе.
We're not preparing any meeting in Moscow, but the invitation is there on the table.
Владимир Владимирович, Людмила Александрова, московский комсомолец. Вы говорите о том, что Россия и Китай выступают за справедливое мироустройство на основе глобального большинства. Скажите, пожалуйста, в текущей мировой системе, что у нас несправедливо, на ваш взгляд, какие механизмы могли бы это решить?
What is unjust and what mechanism could resolve this?
Однополярный мир.
So it's the unipolar world.
И строим наши отношения не на основе
We are building our relationships not on the basis of majority, but on. It's not based on quantity. It's based on this idea,
А идея, я уже об этом сказал, заключается в том, что
and the idea is
мир должен быть
that the world should be multipolar, and that means that all participants have to be equal, and
не должно существовать.
there shouldn't be anyone more equal than others.
Существование, в том числе и в интересах тех, во всяком случае, народов тех стран, руководство которых до сих пор отстаивает эту отживающую.
And this new model will benefit everyone, including those who insist on preserving the old model.